here's a industry program that was developed by the industry for the industry, put forward as a way to solve some of our deficiencies as an
Mhm.
industry. That if we identify some problems that we're having, be upfront and honest about some of those
Right.
problems, and say, "Look, this is what we need to do." Uh, we've had huge success with the program.
Okay.
When we look at why it was invented, why
Mhm.
people really, gravitated towards it. It wasn't just educators pushing it down. It was an industry that really grabbed it and said, "Yeah, this is good for us."
All right. Today I have the luxury of interviewing Dr. AJ Tarpoff from K State University. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be on.
So you're not a first timer.
Nope, been on before.
So you have a history with the podcast, and so you know how it works. I think, and always like to ask, the whoever I'm talking to kind of give a background of what they're doing, and especially how they got there. And I think that to me tells a pretty cool story of how people get into their careers, and what was the driving passion for you to become a vet and you to actually work in academia as a vet instead of having a practice.
No, my background and kind of how I got here has been I've been all over the place, done a lot of different things. That I actually hailed from Southern Illinois. I grew up in Southern Illinois on the other side of the river from St. Louis, and grew up in the beef business. We had a beef packing plant, and also had a high end steakhouse. So was that was my that was my immersion into animal agriculture and beef production. Started literally from birth. So I saw things differently, not necessarily from the farm and the ranch, but from uh, in the plant, looking at the animals, looking at the beef, but then interacting with customers and consumers at through the restaurant.
Yeah.
Because well, if you have family businesses, grow up with that. If an employee doesn't show up, guess who's filling that spot?
Right. Right.
Which is great. Uh, but so I grew up on the beef end of things. I learned, I had this direction and had this idea. I really love science. I really love learning, and I enjoyed school, and which is not always the case for a lot of younger students. But I really like the idea of medicine. Even from a really young age, I really liked the idea of medicine. Really wanted to be a doctor. But as I got a little bit older, I realized I had a really big emphasis in agriculture, and I just could not see myself working in a hospital setting or working in a regular doctor, as in a practice. It wasn't for me. And it's like, well, how do we try to put things together as a medical profession and agriculture? I mean, it was a perfect fit. I want to be a cattle veterinarian, not just a veterinarian, but I want to work with cattle. I want to work with beef production, and that was my target. Yep, and that led me down the line to go to Kansas State University. I did my undergraduate degree here. Was fortunate enough to get into veterinary school and complete all of my degrees here at K State. But during that time, it wasn't enough. I wanted to do more. I moved to South Texas and worked as a feedlot cowboy
Okay.
on the King Ranch.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
uh, that was really cutting my teeth in the feedlot industry specific. I mean, I had been around cattle feeders and farmer feeders. I mean, through Illinois and Missouri all my life. But going into a larger scale, truly immersing myself into that business, that changed things. That really confirmed that's where I should be, and I followed that through veterinary school. Kind of did a production medicine master's as well while I was doing my D.V.M, and went off into. I was fortunate enough; I went straight into feedlot practice. So I, was in South Texas prior to vet school, and then I went all the way to Alberta, Canada, to go practice. So I was a feedlot veterinarian for a number of years, about 4.5 years, before I got the call from my alma mater. Uh, Kansas State reached out and said, "Would you come be the extension veterinarian?" Are you interested? And it was kind of a fishing expedition, from their end. And I was like, I had never thought about academia. I'll be honest with you. That was not on my horizon. I didn't see that coming. But when the ask came out, "Are you interested?" It's like, well, I remember the former extension veterinarian that was my professor, and I always had just a ton of respect for Dr. Larry Hollis was the extension veterinarian when I came through, and I remember what he did, and I always had a lot of respect for it. And I'm like, that is a cool job, that you get to interact with students, you get to work with producers, you get to work with practicing vets, you get to do a lot of different things. And I was kept in touch with Larry, and I always had that really high level of respect for that. And so when the ask came, it's like, wait, am I qualified for that? So I was like, well, it was going to bug me. It's like I had to look into it.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I didn't look into it, it would have bugged me. And I was open and honest with my boss at the time that we talked about it. It's like, no, you need to go look. You never want to second guess yourself. And I came, I looked, it it was right back. It was home, right? I mean,
Right.
after
Right.
living here in Manhattan, Kansas for 7 years, it was kind of a homecoming, so to speak, and everything kind of fell into place. And I made the decision to come on back, and really, it's been a great decision. It's really led to different things and new things. Um, so then that's kind of what I do now, and it's fun to get up in the morning and with just a goal of beef production, helping cattle producers, helping with the beef industry. What can I do is be a resource to help somebody be more profitable, solve a health issue. How can I take some of the stress off of practicing vet by you know providing some resources for them
Yeah.
to help with a client or a newsletter or something. And it's just no 2 days are the same. I get to mix things up. Yesterday, I was talking with a group of uh, folks that are in charge of school lunch programs, talking to them about beef production and how it gets to them. And I mean, they're great people. Not some of them are had agricultural backgrounds, but most of them did not, from all over the U.S. So I never know what's going to happen when the phone rings. All I know is I pick it up, I get to do something cool.
Is stress affecting your bottom line? Even routine handling, inclement weather, weaning, and dietary changes can significantly lower the rumen pH, causing cortisol levels to spike. Cortisol not only compromises the immune system, but also suppresses normal appetite and feed consumption. The solution? Cattle Active. Increase production and reduce the impacts of stress on your cattle for cents a day. Cattle Active restores the balance naturally. Want to learn more how a feeding program including Cattle Active can improve both profits and herd health? Visit us today at proearthanimalhealth.com. Be proactive with Cattle Active.
Definitely a cool job. And I would say, we could spend the whole day talking about extension and the need for extension veterinarians, uh, because we don't work in this vacuum of nutrition, reproduction, etc., agronomy, and so many questions producers have need a veterinarian there at the table as well. And so I think a lot of universities lack that from extension, is that there's just a tremendous need for you guys being part of academia and part of extension and working with not only the producer side but also veterinarians. And so yeah, it's like you say, it's a great opportunity, great gig, and definitely a big need for all sides.
And it's fun to you mentioned all the different areas of emphasis, reproduction, nutrition, all the different areas we work with extension and livestock. Uh, we have all those critical pieces here, and it's fun to work within that team.
Yeah.
That we don't have to be the expert in everything,
Yep.
but where we come at it as a team emphasis. If we have a producer with an issue or a veterinarian with an issue, uh, you know, we get to pool our resources together, come at it, on I know some things that maybe my nutritionist colleagues don't, but and like vice versa, we get to play on each other's strengths,
Right.
utilize our strengths, but really come at it as a team to help solve and to help our producers within the state. And and you're right. It's extension is not to is never meant to replace the relationship with their practicing veterinarian, their local veterinarian.
Correct.
And, and it's fun where I'm at is I get to help support that. I don't come at it. I'm not that producer's, vet. I am here as a resource of information to help them have a tighter relationship
Correct. Yep.
that when they have time together, maybe it's having more fruitful conversations and better understanding from both sides on where each of them are coming from. So they understand the conversation better. The producers ask their maybe better questions or
Hmm.
more thoughtful questions with a little bit of education behind them on a certain topic. Now they can get down to the nitty gritty. What are we going to do? So it's fun.
And a lot of times it's not only the producers but the vets of helping them troubleshoot. Of you know, you in academia should be on the forefront of the cutting edge, or the new stuff that's coming on, and so helping them troubleshoot when something that they've never seen or been around before occurs. Of what is this and how do we handle this?
Honestly, coming into this, a great example of that is coming into this position in 2016. The state of Kansas, we were seeing a lot more cases of anaplasmosis.
Yeah.
It was always here in the south, in the far southeast corner of the state, and it kind of started sweeping through. And that really, so there was a need. There was an absolute need. It's like, okay, something that's relatively new to a region or an environment and to herds,
Right.
that is very costly. But here, producers, veterinarians working together, asking questions together. How do we come up with the best defense plan? How do
Yeah.
we manage this the best? And that's kind of where I came in with some of that information to be able to share directly with them
Hmm.
to let them make the best decisions on each operation. Because there are no two operations that are the same. One practice that works well for one is not going to be the same for the neighbor, just
Correct.
for resources and labor and what they have available. So no, and you're right. It's having the expertise and the right things at the right time to be able to help spread that information. And
Yeah.
which also means I kind of need to be flexible when something comes up. I need to do a deep dive and kind of have my bearings put in on, okay, what is it? What's happening? What are options? So I utilize resources just like folks would use me as a resource.
Correct.
I
Yep.
call out to others. I call out to true experts to be able to get accustomed to it, get educated on it, so I can provide the best information.
No, I think that's great. Great. Let's move over to some topics on hand and talk about BQA, and not just BQA in general, because it's been around a long time. It's a great program that I think every producer should go through, um, whether or not it's on the cow calf to the feeder side. But talk about the relevance of it.
Yeah, no, the relevance. I think that's the big question. Is here's a industry program that was developed by the industry for the industry, put forward as a way to solve some of our deficiencies as an
Hmm.
industry. That if we identify some problems that we're having, be upfront and honest about some of those
Right.
problems, and say, look, this is what we need to do. Uh, we've had huge success with the program.
Yep.
When we look at why it was invented, why
Mhm.
people really, gravitated towards it. It wasn't just educators pushing it down. It was an industry that really grabbed it and said, yeah, this is good for us.
Right.
But those issues were food safety. It was injection site lesions. We had
Right.
blemishes on the carcasses back in the early '90s, and as an industry, we stepped up to the plate. We changed our practices. We shared information. We shared that knowledge, and we changed how we did things.
Yep.
So from that, yeah, that initial goal, yeah, that we did that, and that's well documented. So now what? you know, do we still continue harping on stuff we've already changed? From 30 years ago. We're in a different environment. We're a different industry than what.
Yep.
So today, the relevance of today is, in my mind, it's the striving for continuous improvement. There, as hard, as effective, and as efficient and as good as our industry is at producing beef, we can always do better.
Right.
there's always something we can improve on. And that quest for continuous improvement, we're trying to get to perfection, knowing we're never going to get there. But it's that quest. It's always striving to do better than what we were, to be more efficient, to bring forward a higher quality product that our consumers demand. And so I think that that quest for continuous improvement is important, but I already alluded to it. It's the consumer. So more often, I think where BQA, the relevance today and what's really changed is our consumer base wants to know more about how cattle are raised,
Correct.
right? They want they're concerned, they're main concern, and when we look, we've got data that when we ask, average, consumers, what do you think about beef? Well, they love beef, right? Well,
Mhm.
what are your concerns about beef? Well, that's where concerns start, going. It's like, well, I don't really know how they produce. I hear things on social media,
Right.
but how do ranchers, how do feedlot operators, how do they raise those
Mhm.
animals? And it's not, the Wild West. They see movies and things like that. It's, that's where when we explain beef quality assurance, that it is, the industry has come up with best management practices on how to raise these animals the right way. And this is what's shared. It's a voluntary program. It's a certification for 3 years. It's continuing education for the cattle producers. And the consumer says, wait, the people that raise our food go to continuing education? Isn't that for professionals like doctors and things?
Right.
Well, cattle production is a profession.
Mhm.
So, and whether you're a rancher, you're a farmer, you're a feedlot operator, you're a backgrounder, whether you're full time or part time, it is a profession.
Yep.
And we take a lot of pride. Our producers take an enormous amount of pride in what they do on a daily basis, because if they didn't, they wouldn't be doing what they're doing.
Right.
So it's too tough. Nobody likes breaking ice in February when it's negative 30
No.
outside, but it's those daily chores, doing the right thing every day,
Yep.
providing for those animals what they need on a yearly basis. And keeping up to date. You mentioned, it's something new, something, being on top of, what's
Yeah.
going on. Well, that's where BQA, it's the program that really gets that new information. If we have
Right.
some work that changes our production practices for the better, well, that needs to get out to people
Right.
and to be able to be implemented, because we could have the best research, that is just going to be a game changer. But if it doesn't make it in, if it never gets into the hands of the people that are actually going to do that,
Yep.
it's worthless. So that's where programs that are coordinated, that nationally coordinated, like beef quality assurance, we can put that information forward to the industry in in a unique way, to be able to get that stuff directly to producers. Veterinarians are kept up to date on those things to make sure that they're sharing those best management practices with their clients,
Mhm.
kind of out on farm and things like that. So we're all moving together. So uh, yeah, I think the relevance today is we are much more consumer focused with a program like beef quality assurance than we've ever been. And when our consumer says, "Wow," they really respond to that kind of CE, that continuing education. What our producers are doing, how they learn about what they're doing. I mean, that's huge, and I think it's only going to grow from here. I mean, I think that it's our responsibility
It is.
to be able to keep up to date on those things. And it does nothing but look good and shiny and bright going forward, as long as we do this together as an industry and we keep striving for improvement.
When you think about, and Kansas has very diverse, if you got a lot of cow calf producers, a lot of yearling stocker producers, and then you got a large feedlot focus as well. When you look at adoption of and people getting certified BQA, it's usually feedlots have a higher rate, and then at the cow calf side, you have very low rate, right? So how do you increase that training and getting those cow calf producers to realize the importance of BQA as their program, as their ranch, etc.?
We always try to reach 100% of people, right? But in not always can we do that. And I think what how we reach more I think everybody benefits from the why.
Hmm.
Why should they take some time out of their busy, hectic life? They've got chores to do. They've got family events. They've got kids that need to go here and here. And why would they take time out of their life? What is the benefit to them? And
Hmm.
I think if we start with the why, and they recognize, who they're going to get that information from as a valuable resource. So here in the state, I'm one of the lead trainers. We've got a handful of trainers that do beef quality assurance training. That we always me personally, I try to advertise that as much as I can. So
Hmm.
I may be working with a producer group in a certain county on a completely different topic, but then I allude to beef quality assurance. That
Yeah.
then when an advertisement comes out, that they associate, okay, yep, I learned something about whatever topic about, anaplasmosis or lameness or,
Right.
cattle production. But I learned something. It was, I enjoyed that. It was good. I learned something I took home. I had applicable information that impacted my operation. And then there's this beef quality assurance training. And, maybe the last time I was talking about consumers and, how it's important. So they kind of had a taste of the why,
Hmm.
that now they see a reputable source, they see value because they started to understand the why, and then they come and they everybody takes away something different.
Yeah.
And I've heard that from producers throughout the state that it's, hey, well, Doc, this is the third one I've been to that you've done. But every time I see it, I come because I learned something different, that I pick up something slightly different, and it's like, well, excellent. That means
Yeah.
either it would have been awesome if you picked up all of that, the first time,
First go.
but it's so much information,
It is.
that, and depending on what they're doing or what they're troubleshooting or what they're having problems with, they will pick up something different each time, which
Hmm.
I think is interesting. And that's where it's continuous.
Yeah.
Nobody's nobody's at that, perfect
Right.
level.
Right.
It's all small steps that we do to try to be a little bit better. And I think that's where it is. I think it's advertisement, it's recognizing value, it's recognizing, good quality information, who it's coming from. I
Hmm.
think all of those pieces together help us reach more of those cow calf operators, more of those folks that may not have done it.
Yeah. So many times, especially in the cow calf, is they don't necessarily see the value.
Mhm.
I'm selling my calves at weaning. I don't get any value for that. Same comment of preconditioning. I don't get any value for that, and there is value in that, and sometimes it's hard to get through them of where that value is.
Well, uh, and thankfully, we've got better data to help with
Yeah.
that conversation. So Colorado State did a pretty good, really cool study that they looked at some of the video auction
Hmm.
data from one of the big companies. They pulled all that information and they went through in that particular auction deal. It had, is the operation BQA certified?
Right. Right.
Is the producer BQA certified? And they went back and they actually found a value, like $7 a hundredweight
Mm.
of value just for putting beef quality assurance
Right.
on that online auction. So it's, and rightfully so. It's the people producing that say, okay, that producer took time out of their life to go get that continuing education. If they're if they're you know they're using that type of information, who knows what else they're doing, but I feel confident.
Right.
It, and I think when all stages of our, production chain start to recognize and start to uh, really see that as a value add,
Yep.
that I think that's pretty cool, and that's tangible for a lot of our cow calf operators to understand.
Pretty much so. Especially with newer technology coming out, right? And the one I think about the most is darts and the efficacy of using darts, which I have high concerns with darting.
Mhm.
And so, but it's becoming a more and more common practice because of it makes things easier sometimes. It saves a lot of time, a lot of effort. If you see a sick calf, instead of having to go back and get a horse, etc., I can dart it right now and take care of it. And so, but there's concerns with that, right?
And there are, and and ultimately the concern comes from food safety.
Mhm.
Okay, and that's where I'm blunt and I'm honest. In my personal opinion on darts, I share the information, but I should also share my viewpoints so people know where I'm coming from. It is, as a veterinarian, I like tools in my toolbox, right? It's there's a time and a place
Right.
for everything in that toolbox,
Yep.
right? Now, just like any tool, you can use it inappropriately, okay, or accidentally you do something wrong that's detrimental rather than helpful, and that's with any tool.
Right.
Doesn't matter if it's a dart gun. It doesn't matter if it's a needle and syringe. It doesn't matter whatever the tool is. So that's where I come from. I don't want to lose any tool in my toolbox, but we got to be real honest with ourselves within the industry that we've seen issues.
Yep.
We've seen darts embedded
Hmm.
into carcasses and into animals that make it into the kill plant.
Yep.
They find them, and our processors, our beef processors find these, and it's like, okay, this is a problem.
Correct.
But and I think internally we've always been a self police, right?
Hmm.
As
Yep.
an industry,
Yep.
it's we need to recognize and acknowledge that if we have an issue, we need to fix it. And if we solve these things adequately,
Hmm.
from within, we don't lose some of those technologies. We don't lose some of those tools.
Right.
So if I need a dart gun to go lay down a bull that's, doing something out in the pasture, I can go dart it, anesthetize it, get and do whatever I need to.
Yep.
That's a time and a place. But being solely reliant on a tool like that can get us in trouble,
It can.
right? And I think that's where we've been in the past. But I think just acknowledging, sharing, understanding the concerns, understanding kind of best management practices, and understanding that all technologies are not perfect,
No.
right?
Right.
That we've got some data that up to 30% of those darts going down range don't adequately inject all of the product.
Yep.
So now it's like, oh, if we're underdosing by 30, by half, or only cc goes into that animal instead of 10. Okay, well now we have, oh, the dart went down range. I treated that animal. It's
Right.
like, well, the dart went down range and it inadequately treated that animal, and we have no idea. And and from my perspective, I think that's even worse, is because now we have a comfort level of, oh, I already treated that animal. It's like, well, no, I sent something down range, but I have no idea if it did what it was supposed to.
Correct.
So that's why it's sharing the concerns,
Yep.
sharing what's kind of going on, but then also being realistic that if you have to, here's some proper steps to go forward. Because I think if we continue reliance on that technology, we're going to continue to have problems,
Yep.
and I don't want to lose the use of a product for a time and a place.
And that's where some of the importance of BQA comes in is that feedback. And that data that's been generated over all the years. If you look at beef quality from the 90s on, of the change in beef quality that has occurred, the change in our practice that have occurred since the first BQA report came out, we have improved leaps and bounds.
Yeah.
And that's where that importance comes in, is that feedback of saying we need to do things better, and this is the problems.
And it's continue the good things that you're doing. It's not just it's an internal reflection,
It
and
is.
it's saying, okay, what are we doing great? What are we doing not so good? How do we get more value out of every animal that we're selling? How do we bring more value to the marketplace, right? And I think it's all pieces of
Well, one quick question for you, and is, when you think about so many students going their route or wanting to go their route of vet school, what is your recommendation for those students when you think about being a large animal vet? So what do you tell students is your goal of when you talk to them?
Now, and I'm realistic. I see the stats, and it's and we have a huge pre-vet group,
Yes.
undergraduate students that come in and initially say, yes, I want to be in pre-vet. One, I always recommend for students, keep your eyes open, right? It's amazing how life throws you opportunities that you never would have thought,
Yeah.
even though you might be going down this road that you think that this is what you want to do. There when great opportunities come forward, take a look at it, right? Don't go through life with blinders on, because yes, you know becoming a veterinarian, it's a lot of kids goal. It's
Yeah.
a lot of from a young age, that was their dream. They had a lot of respect for their local veterinarian. Now we have TV shows talking about, mixed animal practices and things like that, which I think is great. It really increases the interest and
Yeah.
kind of gives that visual of what
Hmm.
food animal practice or mixed animal practice out in a rural area looks like. Because there are opportunities. We have some legitimate veterinary shortage areas. We have some things like that that folks that come from a rural place that want to be a veterinarian, and if they have to drive, if they have the grades, if they have all those things, they can go, and there is a place for them.
Yep.
But so if that's what they want to do, great. But along that path, going through your undergraduate curriculum, meeting people, networking, all of a sudden you come up with an opportunity. I mean, how did I end up in South Texas working as a cowboy?
Right. Right.
Right? There was an opportunity that arose. Why did I get a graduate degree? It's an opportunity arose that I could go do some really cool stuff at a commercial feedlot, 100,000 head commercial feedlot, and work there
Yep.
and do my research. It's like, wow, that was cool. Yeah, why did I go to Canada? Again, it's just there are opportunities that approach that completely, you would never plan if you'd write, oh, this is my perfect thing. No, don't worry about a perfect job or a perfect
Hmm.
career or a perfect
Right.
decision. It's
Right.
there are choices that come at us. Be prepared to make those choices because you never know, where it's going to take
Be willing to take the risk at times.
you. Yep.
It's time for our famous three.
All right. To wrap us up, I've got 3 questions for you.
Yeah.
And so the first is, what is your recommendation or go-to book on, beef that you're just go to?
Well, I guess I need to be I'll be a little bit selfish on this answer, but I've got to tote our beef extension website.
Yep.
So not necessarily a book, but if I think about a resource, we've got resources on nutrition and vet med and repro, you name it. But ksubbeef.org, ksubbeef.org is our beef extension website. Got a lot of great information there. So that's my go-to.
Yeah, extension is definitely underutilized and a tremendous resource for producers. What is a book, non-ag book recommendation that you have that you think people should read, utilize?
Yeah. I obviously living in Kansas, there's a ton of history,
Yeah.
just with the state. I came across a book, Wild Bill, right? And that's
Mm-hmm.
that's the title, but it was about Wild Bill. But it gave you a historical perspective on kind of his life, what was happening. I mean, the cattle drives, the rail stations, kind of what they looked like, what was happening,
Right.
how pioneers were kind of moving west and how Kansas kind of got settled. And it's fun to read a book like that because it was describing some of these towns, like as they began, as the railroad reached, Abilene,
Mm-hmm.
and they were describing the topography. And it's like, I drove past that yesterday. So I've really enjoyed that book.
Oh, that's great. Great. Lastly, what, in your opinion, um, what makes a successful beef professional successful?
So I think a successful anybody within the beef industry,
Yeah.
and I think what makes them successful is communication,
Yeah.
right? And it's a true. And I'm a communicator.
Mhm.
I'm an educator, so I have to communicate. But I think when I look around the industry and some of those very successful individuals that anybody looks to, and it's like, oh, I got a lot of respect for that person.
Yeah.
Well, they communicate, they share ideas, they talk, with their employees, with their neighbors.
Mhm.
People know them. They're willing to share, they're willing to talk, they're willing to communicate, and I think that communication just it sends a sense of if that's a good neighbor, that's a good producer, they're a good role model.
Right.
So I think those people that are good communicators,
Mhm.
that are willing to communicate about things logically, methodically, thinking through different things and being able to share those ideas. I think that's what really sets some folks apart. That allows them to be really successful is people are kind of drawn to those people that communicate,
Right.
and I think that's what maybe like we were talking about those some of those opportunities. it might
Mhm.
bring some of those opportunities to the table that others may not get. And it all comes back to communication.
Totally agree. Well, thank you for taking the time and jumping on the podcast. You know, I appreciate your stance on students taking a risk
Yeah.
and looking for those opportunities that, you know, your eyes may be set on something and this opportunity jumps out, and be willing to take the risk because it may lead you in a totally different direction that may be even more rewarding than you ever thought going this other way would have been. And just the experience of things.
And those experiences, when you take a risk, you take a chance, and you go all in with that decision,
Right.
and it takes you to just even higher levels than you ever dreamed of. Like that's pretty cool.
It
And it
is.
there's a and nobody can take that away from you. But in as human nature, sometimes where it's easier, taking the path of least resistance. Well, that other path over here,
Yeah.
yeah, it looks like there's some boulders in the way, but guess what? When you get up over the top and when you see what you can see on the other side, nothing is better in the entire world. There's no better feeling than being able to overcome some of those small obstacles to see the world of opportunity.
The obstacle is the way.
That's right. That's a good book.
It is a good book. It is a good book. And so I think that's one thing that, you know, people in general is get out of your comfort zone, learn. And so don't see obstacles as something in the way of your progress.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
Well, thanks again. Really enjoyed it. And so hopefully a lot of people will get a lot out of this conversation. And
Well, I hope so. And it's always been a pleasure. And it was fun to talk with you today. And no, hopefully we do it again.
that sounds good.
All right. Take care.
All right. You too.